Alright, so I fell into a rabbit hole about camera controls and movement controls and all these things and hotkeys in League of Legends. And I pretty much fell into that rabbit hole because of like a 2-minute segment of Expetu and LS's like 2.5 hour long discussion. So before I really get into things, I am going to go ahead and play that clip.
Obviously, I unlock my camera when there's need for that. You know,
Okay.
I use Y with my index finger to do that.
I have a hypothesis that actually the best camera control. I used to think it was Rainer's method with the mouse, but now
He means the drag click with the little mouse button.
I actually think it's WASD with the WASD has the feature that like the camera will move for you. You know what I'm talking about?
It's like,
He says the camera will move for you. It doesn't exactly move for you, and I'll get into that later.
like dynamic camera.
Yeah, dynamic camera. Yeah, that's the best camera. Like it just is. Like I mean, I don't know if I could.
think you're right. Did you have the conversation with Nidhogg about his camera control at any point?
Yes,
Do you know
Nidhogg's was good. Then Rainer's is the evolution on that, and then now WASD exists. I don't know.
I'll touch on it here because I'm not going to talk as much about Nidhogg's. That one's very complicated. I don't think it's quite as good as Rainer's, mostly because it has like a huge learning curve because you're really changing up your controls.
If I can relearn WASD because it's like it is so objectively
I know what you mean.
better. It is so objectively better. Maybe you know what? Maybe it is possible because Leffen in Smash learned to use the box. For Fox, right?
Okay, that's pretty much the extent they talk about this. So I'm going to cut it right there. But there you have it. They pretty much both saying that they agree that WASD is the best, and LS is hypothesizing that dynamic camera is the best camera control. So let's go back to the testing. And so you'll notice that LS said some pretty interesting things that Expetu seemed to pretty much agree with about Nidhogg's camera method, Rainer's camera method, and then finally WASD with dynamic camera. And so they seem to think pretty definitively that WASD was the best movement controls and that dynamic camera was the best camera controls. And to be honest, I just don't get it. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the things, the ups and downsides about the different control schemes and at least my understanding of them right now, because I don't feel like people are really talking about these things on this level, where like LS and like Expetu and like Nidhogg have, where they go really, really in depth into what seem like minor things. So to start off, a core principle behind pretty much all the debate about camera movement in League of Legends is that pretty much you want to be able to put your camera wherever it needs to be as fast and efficiently as possible without moving your mouse too far away from your character. You want your mouse to be able to stay centered around the action, right? Like around here, or maybe if you're throwing a skill shot like around here, you don't want to have to constantly edge pan everywhere. You want to move your camera. And you don't want to play on lock screen because it makes you look boosted. Unless you're like Expetu, but even he said he unlocks the screen sometimes. So there's a few different ways that people have come up with to control your camera. Nidhogg's is the most outlandish, and pretty much that includes rebinding the camera controls that are usually, the pan controls are normally on the arrow keys, and so you can just click on the arrow keys and it'll, you know, move your camera in these directions. He rebinds them to WASD and uses click movement, and then sort of readjusts the keyboard to sort of fit these controls. And I think it's pretty interesting, and I do think it's probably better than defaulting or lock camera. And I'm going to go ahead and link his videos. If you're interested, you can like see his actual breakdown of it, because I think it's too difficult to learn or to like put into practice for you, put on a show for you right now of how it would work. So I just recommend go watching his video. I'll link that, and I'll link his and LS's discussion about his whole camera control. But you'll notice in the LS clip that he says that Rainer's camera control is actually the evolution on this. So let me tell you a little bit about this, because I couldn't really find anything that was like saying exactly what Rainer's camera control is, right? But I got the gist of it by doing enough digging. So I'm going to give you a breakdown of what Rainer's camera control is, why I think it's good, what keybinds I use to support with it. I don't know specifically what this guy Rainer uses for his camera controls, but as far as point and click movement is concerned, this is the, I think, the premier way of controlling your camera. Also, in my opinion, I have issues with WASD movement and dynamic camera that I'm going to talk about here. Maybe they're not warranted. I'd love for people to tell me, I'm wrong that for X, Y, and Z reason, because I'd love to go have a good reason to just go learn WASD for fun. That's just how I have fun interacting with the game. But right now I'm thinking that Raynor's is just the best way to do it, and WASD and dynamic camera has issues. But let's get into Raynor's real quick. So in case you didn't know, this is actually also how BoxBox controls his camera. So if you go to settings, and you go to camera options, there's this setting right here called mouse button drag control. This is the best setting I've ever found. Sorry, not that I've ever found, but that I've ever heard of. Pretty much what it allows you to do is it lets your middle mouse button become a pan button for your camera. So if you ever use like some of these like creative programs like Autodesk Maya, or you use like Photoshop or something like this, they usually have a button that allows you to pan around by dragging your mouse. This is what that button allows you to do. And the reason this is so great is because instead of having to pan all the way to the edge of your camera, what you can do is you can keep your mouse like around your character, and then you can just like middle click and then drag around. So you see, my mouse is never going too far away from my character. It's moving like a little bit, but ultimately I can move my camera really far away, and like my mouse is still right here, right next to my character. Without a sound. And so it's a really easy and much more intuitive way of adhering to this principle without, adjusting all of your hotkeys and like increasing your APMs with Nidhogg style and everything like this. So I think this is very good. There's a couple things with this method. So first of all, most people, what they do is they don't actually leave it on middle click. BoxBox leaves it on middle click, but from what I could hear, or from what I could read, Raynor and people who adhere to this method tend to bind it to mouse button. Either mouse button 4 or 5, like a side mouse button. So that way it's like you don't have to hold down middle click. Apparently people find that awkward. It's also bound to zoom. I think you can unbind zoom technically, so you don't necessarily run into that issue. But just as a note, I prefer it on the middle mouse click, but it seems like people tend to prefer it on the side mouse button. There's some other bindings that I pair with this. So first of all, you might also be wondering about F keys. So I do think F keys are really good to use, pretty much for the same reason. For those of you, again, that might not know, it's like the gist of it is, it's like without moving your mouse anywhere or like to your map or anything, you can keep your mouse to the center on your character, and you can just like peek at bot, and then when you snap back, your mouse is going to be exactly where it needs to be to continue playing the game. So it's optimal in that sense, right? I don't know if it's my keyboard or maybe my hands are too small. I have trouble actually using the F keys. So I have special binds that don't work in every situation, keep in mind, but my compromise for being able to use F keys is I've actually bound my Ally 1 a hotkey to mouse button 5, which is my upper side mouse button, and then my bottom ally to mouse button 4. It's pretty much what this does is, for me, it's usually going to be like my top, or sometimes I have it set to my jungler, and then my support are going to have the F keys bound to my side mouse. This just makes it easier for me to include some amount of F keys in my gameplay without having to like learn this awkward hand movement, or at least this hand movement that I find very awkward with where you use the F keys. That's just difficult for me, and maybe it'd be worth learning, but I think for the moment that for where I'm at, especially since I just got into using Raynor's method, that using these side buttons for F keys is what's working for me right now. And if you just want to like start using them or start practicing using them, I actually recommend using a similar thing. Like, it's really easy to just like start practicing or getting in the habit of using F keys if they're so accessible. I mean, my thumb just rests on these buttons, so I can just like tap on support whenever I feel like it, tap on jungle, or tap on top whenever I feel like it, and look for a roam. All right, so the last keybind I'll talk about for Raynor's that I also use, I actually don't have center camera bound. What I do instead is I actually have my spacebar bound to lock and unlock camera. I don't have it on Y. And this is a couple different things. Mainly, I just find it awkward to have to hold space down if I want my character to be tracked, and I also don't want to have to press Y if I don't want to have to spam the spacebar. So instead, it's like, if I want to recenter my camera real quick, all I gotta do is double tap to just get a quick center, and I don't have to, hold my spacebar down, which makes my hand feel like lighter and more dexterous. Like, I don't know if it actually is going to slow you down if you have to all that much if to hold spacebar while pressing your other keys. I just find this makes my hand feel like it moves across the keyboard nicer. The other thing is when you have locked camera on, something that's very nice is when you do use an F key. And X-Pet 2 actually talks about this. When you have lock camera on and you choose to use an F key, it instantly snaps back. So you won't have to like F key and then press spacebar in order to snap back to your camera. You can just spacebar to toggle your lock camera, and then bam, it just snaps back for you instantly. And you can do 1 frame or whatever. You can hold it for a second, get a few frames of whatever, bot lane or top lane when you F key, and then it'll snap back for you. So I like, rather than hold my spacebar to center my camera, I like to toggle my lock camera. There's also some neat things with this. When I play a champion like Zed, sometimes your shadow can end up way over here, and sometimes you're going to pan over before you take that shadow, but also other times you're going to be looking at what's happening over here, and you want to keep your movement like over here, dodging skill shots or something that are coming at you this way or this way. And so it's nice to be able to just lock your camera rather than you take the shadow with your unlocked camera, then you have to pan back, or you have to like take the shadow and then center your screen. If you just lock the camera right before you take your shadow, then it'll move your screen over there immediately, and like it'll be just like slightly faster than either recentering or potentially risking not seeing what's happening on your actual body by trying to pan over to the long range shadow that you want to teleport. That's a pretty specific thing, but it's just something I enjoy. So then I'm gonna get into WASD and dynamic camera. This is the weirdest one to me, and maybe there's things that I'm just not getting about it. But I think at the very least, I don't understand why this would be good. So here's WASD, right, with dynamic camera. So one of the big things about dynamic camera that LS really likes is that it moves the camera for you, kind of. So it kind of like leans towards your mouse a little bit, kind of like edge panning. So you notice I don't have to go to the edge of the screen in order to actually have the camera start moving around. So that's one like kind of upside. It's like I can still keep my mouse pretty close to my character and pan my camera a little bit, and then it also doesn't fully center the champion. So like I can kind of be looking over here while I'm moving over here. He calls it like moving it for you. It doesn't exactly move the camera for you, but it's like a loose unlocked camera. It has like a range of how far it goes, so you can't scout ahead. Sorry, there is a mechanic called scout ahead, so I won't use that terminology too far. So like you will have to unlock your camera sometimes if you want to pan farther, except if you use the scout ahead feature, which again you can middle mouse click and it'll sort of like zoom a set distance all the way out. Like I press middle mouse click button this way, and then boom, it goes to this specific direction this far, and it'll like there's a I guess if you edge pan it'll go. Okay, actually, sorry, I'm just finding it now. I guess if you do the edge pan and middle click, you can kind of play it like free cam, which is very strange. But let me go ahead and talk about some of the things I don't like about this. So for one thing, it kind of acts in like locked camera in a few different ways. So for example, if you are making, you're in a fight, you're in a play, and you do a shadow, right? Say you want to like shadow R somebody. You have this problem where you have unlocked camera, where if you do a blink, which obviously a lot of times you're going to be doing a blink on various different champions, right? Because everybody takes flash, then it moves your mouse. You see, I shadow, and then bam, my mouse is now way over here. So if you need to click or aim a skill shot post flash, this won't matter before your flash, right? Because if I say I want to shadow R into this guy, I can, even with the locked camera, I can click the R and take the shadow, and it'll go off, right? I mean, it's still going to be bad because I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to have to like aim my skill shot afterward, and that's going to, my camera and my cursor still going to be kind of flying around a bit. So that's one reason I don't really like dynamic camera. I feel like if you want to do certain types of plays, you're still going to have to unlock your camera for mechanics' sake, right? And so I don't really find the way in which that it moves for you. I don't feel like it's far enough or free enough or the tracking is strong enough that it really is good. I don't know if I'm making my point very clear, but in short is it has these problems with the LUT camera, and it doesn't actually move that much for you, like in a way that's nice. Like it kind of helps center on the action because, like you said, you can be kind of like over on this side of the screen more easily, but that's about it, right? It's like, and this position, especially with Rayner's method, is so easy to achieve, right? Slightly, being like slightly to one side with Rayner's method is super easy. You move your mouse like half a centimeter, right? And then now your character is on this side of the screen, and you're looking at the action over here. It's so effortless on this method of camera control, and it doesn't come with the dynamic and lock camera situation of you do this blink and now your mouse isn't where you want it to be. So that's one of my things with the WASD and dynamic cam. Another one of my things with the WASD and dynamic cam is that you actually have dynamic cam for point and click movement. You actually have the option of using it for point and click anyways. So it's also not tied to WASD. If you think this is like good, like a good type of camera movement, it's definitely better, I think, with WASD. But it's not like he mentions that WASD and dynamic camera combined are the best way to do it. But there's not necessarily a reason to tie them together. You don't have to do both. I also have some issues with WASD movement. So hold on. I think the easiest one for me that most people probably can get pretty easily, but I never really hear people talk about it in this exact way, right? Let's go into WASD movement, and let's get this up. Okay, so if you're in WASD movement, right, you have I can do better. You have, this isn't going to be perfect, but you're going to get the gist, and you guys kind of already are going to be able to see where I'm going with this, as it's like you have these 8 directions of movement when you're WASD, right? You're going to have sort of, I can't even get my camera to center properly on this. This is going to be your range of movement, right? You can move in every 45th degree, exactly. You can move this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. So most of the time, I think this isn't going to matter all that much. But it does technically mean that if you have, an enemy, like in this location right here, like you see, and they throw a skill shot at you in this direction, you can't move perpendicular to the skill shot. You can't move in a 90-degree angle from the skill shot because that would be this way, right? You can only move in this 45th degree here. So this is coming at you from whatever this angle is, right? 20 degrees or whatever. And you can't take the fastest path out of the skill shot. And now this might be offset by the fact that, first of all, humans obviously aren't going to clearly frame the discussion around WASD specifically with AD carries and things like this. The clip that LS and Expectu had, they didn't specify for marksman or even for any particular class of champion. They might think it's better or worse for different classes of champions, but since they didn't specify, I'm assuming that they meant just generally this is the best form of movement and camera control in the game. That's my thinking on it, right? Okay, so you have this thing right here. And for some champions on top of that, on top of this, you can't dodge perpendicular skill shots. There's also some champions whose, kits change or become slightly different when you can't move opposite to your opponent, right? So also imagine you're a Kali, right? And you want to Q this target here, and then you want to go proc your passive. Oh, sorry, this target's not an example because, obviously he's in in a straight line with you, right? When you want to queue this target, right? In order to proc a Kali passive, you're going to want to move in this direction as fast as possible after you get your Q off, right? But you can't move in this direction. You can only move in this direction or this direction. So it's going to be like your Akali passive is going to go off just a little bit slower because you can't move exactly opposite of your opponent. And so it's going to matter a little bit more on some champions than others. So my biggest thing is, like, this isn't me saying that WAC is bad, but mostly I'm saying I'm not convinced that these changes or these, like, downsides are obviously outweighed by the positives. So that's my biggest thing right now, especially when you take into account existing League players learning the movement. That's maybe like the biggest thing, right? Is it's like, are the upsides even remotely worth it to relearn the game? I probably would do it anyways if I could have some sort of substantial evidence or convincing argument for that it definitively is better, but there are just some gripes with that I have with it that make me not convinced. Dynamic camera doesn't seem like it's very good. It seems like I just have better control with Raynor's method, and on top of that, Dynamic camera shares some cursor placement problems with lock screen. And on top of that, WASD movement, I feel like has some trade-offs, especially since I know I've seen some videos. They did nerfs to, like, kiting on attack speed with WASD. I know you can get around them by, like, tap clicking instead of holding the button, but it's still something to consider. Because it's not going to matter most of the time, but I assume that these nerfs can affect you because it's essentially sort of like a type of input lag. Switch to it with high attack speed post 10 minutes or things like this. But I think as a general rule that people are kind of oversimplifying it, not taking like these really specific and minute seemingly minute things into account, which is why I use LS and Xpet2 as a jumping off point, because these are players that actually really care about this type of thing, yet I don't feel like anyone's really tuning into what they're saying about this type of stuff, mostly because from what I can tell, there's not really clear content on them explaining why they think this is better. If I had longer than a 2-second clip to work with about them explaining the reasoning, I would, but that's part of why I'm making this. I'm just like, I don't understand these things, and so maybe I'm wrong, maybe these aren't actual concerns with WASD and Dynamic camera, but I haven't heard them address any of these types of issues, and I actually haven't really seen anyone else or anyone in comments specifically talk about these things, about angles and skill shots and cursor placement with flash and blinks and all these types of things. I just haven't seen them be addressed, at least in regards to the combination of WASD and Dynamic camera. So that's why I'd love to hear a more in-depth analysis for their thoughts. I hope you guys found that interesting. That's gonna be all for now. Have a good day.